Hello. So I'm doing this video today because as you know, my book, The Magician's Ching, has now been available for some time. I hope some of you have bought it and are enjoying it. If you haven't bought it yet, check it out. It's on Amazon. And it has a great deal of information about the I Ching that you don't find often in other books. However, there is something that some people have pointed out. In the book, there's descriptions of different ways to generate an I Ching hexagram. And of course, there's the coin method, and then there's also the 4 stabs, which is the system that is basically new in the book that I figured out, designed as a way to match the probabilities of the Yarrow system without having to go through the whole process of the Yarrow system. Then there are a few other methods in there too. So there's a variety of ways in the book for how to generate a hexagram, not to mention the plum blossom numerology method. But some people felt that the fact that I didn't actually include the instructions on how to do a reading with the Yarrow stalks or sticks, that was an omission on my part. So in response to that, I'm doing this video. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to do a Yarrow reading. And in fact, I'm going to show you a secret kind of tip that makes it a lot easier than most books make it out to be, because most of the books don't actually, they tend to miss out on a fundamental kind of trick, you could say, or not even a trick. It's just an obvious fact if you're not just copying out of the original instructions that you saw in some other book, right? If you've actually been paying attention. So I'll highlight first, though, that the Yarrow method, it's very good. I mean, the probabilities of it are, to me, the right probabilities for doing the most correct kind of focused analysis of this moment in space-time, which is what you want to do with the I Ching, right? Not that the coins don't work, but that the coins take a less focused kind of reading, right? It's like the difference between using a meter stick and using something that can measure things to the millimeter or something like that, right? So the Yarrow system, the reason that I replaced it with the 4 stabs is just that the Yarrow system requires, first of all, a particular tool, which are the 50 Yarrow stalks or sticks. And second is that it takes a lot longer to do, and a lot of people don't necessarily have that kind of time, and it is a little bit more complicated, right? So for me, the 4 stabs method is the perfect balance between the coins, which are super simple, but maybe too simple from the point of view of getting into the right meditative state, although you can obviously do that if you choose to, and not necessarily as accurate. And the Yarrow stock method, which is super accurate, obviously super meditative because of the amount of time and focus that you have to have in doing it, but that that amount of time and the complexity and the tools required mean that you can't just be doing it. You can't do a Yarrow stock reading on the go, whereas with the 4 stabs method or with the 3 coins method, you can, because all you need are 3 and or 4 two-sided objects, be them sticks or coins or what have you. But if you want to do a method using the Yarrow stocks, here's my little vase where I keep them. And here are the Yarrow stocks. Although these aren't actually Yarrow, you don't actually have to use Yarrow or milfoil or any of the traditional objects. All that you really have to have are 50 sticks of relatively even size, big enough that they're bigger than your hand, right? Not so ridiculously big that they're impractical. In ancient traditions, there was elements that the milfoil, the stalks that they used in China, would be cut from the graves of great and learned men or powerful men or kings or things like that. But I think none of that is actually essential to what you're doing here. This is a type of technology, right? And I'm going to show you how you would go about generating a hexagram. Now, to do this, first I'm going to need to grab something here, to grab a pad of paper so that we can express the lines as we go along. And I'm going to have to shift my camera. So let's see if we can do this and not have the camera fall down. All right, so there we go. Of course, when you're doing the Yarrow stalk, the whole benefit of the Yarrow stalk is in ritual. So what you want to do is make sure to go through the whole ritual as I describe it in the book. You would do the kowtows towards the Ching. You would light incense, but we're going to skip all that for the purpose of this video, where we're just going to talk about the method itself, okay? And so to generate a hexagram, you have to do a whole series of movements. So first you have the 50 Yarrow stalks, right? You take one, I have one that's color-coded, and you put it aside. That one is separate from the rest. Now you have 49 left in your hand. And what you do first is divide it at random into two sections. Trying to make it so that the sections will be visible to everybody here. All right, I'm going to put this somewhere visible there. Okay. So now you take one from the left and you hold it between your fingers, and then you take the right and from the right you start counting off in groups of 4. So I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 4, 4, until you get to a number that are 4 or less. So I have 2 left there. I put that between my fingers. Then you grab the other stack and you do the same thing. You count it off in groups of 4. 4, 4, 4, 4. And then with what you're left, you take this, you put them all together, and you're going to have 4, 5, 8, or 9 sticks left in your hand, and you put those over the one stick that you separated at the beginning. I'm going to put them at an angle in this case. You don't have to put them at an angle, but I'm trying to give the most room for the camera. Then you take all the other stalks that are left, the 2, you put them back together and you separate the piles again, just like the last time. And what you do here is, again, you grab one from the left, you put it between your fingers, and then you grab the right pile, and again you're counting off by 4s. 4, 4, 4, and you're left with 4 or less. You put that between your fingers. You grab the other pile, and you are again counting off by 4s. When you're doing this, you should be trying to have your mind cleared of everything except the question you have asked. And if you gain experience doing this, eventually it becomes very kind of contemplative, you're prone to entering into a meditative state. So here I had 3 left from that one, and that is 8. As I said, every time you're going to get 4, 5, 8, or 9. And you put that, again, on the crossbar, right? Now, this Yarrow method, the Yarrow method that you see in almost every I Ching book, here comes the third operation. You split it again. It's exactly like the first two. This Yarrow method comes to us from Zhu, who was one of the great I Ching teachers. He elaborated it in a commentary text of the I Ching, and that's the version that ended up showing up in the English translation. So here I am counting 4 at a time. 4 and 4. I have 1 left there. And he wanted to go to certain pains to explain, because this was a method that was being less used nowadays, or in his days, in favor of the coin method. He wanted to explain how to connect this to the coin method, and so he had a bunch of mathematical elements to what he was doing. So what Zhu did was he explained how the numbering system worked in context of the coin system. And that's where it gets really complicated, because then you're expected to transfer, to take what you got here and turn it all into a bunch of numbers. 4, 4, 4, 4, and now I have 2 there left, and as you see here I have 4. But you don't actually have to do that. Now, this is the moment where normally in an I Ching book you'd be told, well, you have to change these values of 4 or 5 or 8 or 9 into values of 2 or 3, add them together to get a number that is 6, 7, 8, or 9, right? So it's like this really complicated mathematics. Here's the great secret. All you have to do, if you've put these 3 piles on the crossbar, separate from each other, is you just have to look at them, okay? The piles will be either small piles or big piles, okay? Small piles will have 4 or 5, right? Like these 2 here. Big piles will have 8 or 9, okay? And so now, if you have a situation like this, where you have 2 small and 1 big pile, what that makes is a yin line, a broken line, okay? And so you just draw a yin line, okay? If you had instead a situation where you had, let's say, 2 big piles and 1 small pile, that would make a solid yang line, okay? So it would make a line like this, right? If what you had were 3 big piles, they all had 8 or 9 in them, like that, then that would be a changing line from yin to yang. So it would be where the broken line is becoming, it will eventually become a solid line, right? And if you have 3 small piles, like this, where they're all 4s or 5s, then it's the opposite kind of changing line. It's a changing yang line, where a solid is going to eventually change into a broken, okay? So just so you can see there, right? Again, 3 small piles means you have a solid changing line that's going to change into a broken. 3 big piles, that means that it's a yin line that's going to change into a yang line. If you have 2 small and 1 big, then that's a yin line. And if you have 2 big and 1 small, then that's a solid line, okay? So let's do this one more time here, just to show you how to do it again, right? So you've got these, you've already put aside that one because so far that first operation would have made one line, right? You have to do this a total of 6 times in order to generate a hexagram. You break them into 2 piles, pretty much at random, generally down the middle is the idea. You take the one from the left, you put it in your hand, right? And then from the right, you grab all the sticks on the right side, and you start counting off by 4s, okay? Counting off by 4s, putting them aside, 4, 4, 4, and I'm left with 2 there, and there you go. And then you grab from the other pile, and you count them off by 4s. That's 4 there, 4, 4, 4, and 2. So there we go, and that's a small pile. It's a pile with 4 or 5 sticks. You take the remaining stalks, you divide them in 2. You take one from the left, put it between your fingers. You grab the ones from the right. You're counting them off. 4, 4, 4, 4, and you're left with 4 there. So you put them between your fingers. You grab the other pile, and you do the same thing. 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, and there you go. And this is a large pile, right, which has 8 or 9 stalks. And you do it a third time with what's left here. You split them in 2. Take one from the left, put it between your fingers. You grab the pile from the right. 4, 4, 4, 4. You have one left, goes there. You grab the other pile. 4, 4, 4, 4. You have that, and so there you go. And that is a small pile. So here I have 2 small piles, 1 big pile. And that means that this would be a yin line. Okay? So you'd have to do this operation. It takes 3 steps to create the 3 piles. You have to do this 6 times. So there's a total of 18 operations before you've completed an actual hexagram. You can see why the Yarrow method takes a lot of time, and you can see why the coin method became popular as an alternative. It's much easier on the go. It's also why I think that the 4 stabs method is popular. But remember, you don't actually have to do any complex calculations once you have the 3 piles. If you have 3 piles that are small, right, then that's a solid line that's going to turn into a broken line, a yang that's going to turn into a yin, right? If you have 2 piles that are small and 1 that is large, that is to say this one has 8 or 9 and these ones have 4 or 5, doesn't matter where they are, it doesn't matter if this one's in the middle, it just matters how many there are, right? So as long as you have 2 small piles and 1 big pile, that is a solid That's an unchanging broken line, right? It's a yin line, right? If then you end up having two big piles and one small pile, then that's a yang line, a solid line that doesn't change, okay? And finally, if you have all three piles being large piles, then that's the rarest of all cases, because it only happens once in every 16 times. That is a yin line, a broken line that is becoming solid. Right? And the reason why there's this difference, coming back up here, the reason why there's this difference in the probabilities has to do with the nature of change through time and space. Right? The broken lines, the yin lines, represent that which is weak, right? Weak states. And the yang lines represent strong states, right? And so it is more likely for a strong state to become weak than for a weak state to become strong, right? And likewise, the difference in the stable weak and strong states, it's more likely that that something will be weak and stable than that something will be strong and stable. So something that's strong is more likely to be unstable, and something that is weak is more likely to be stable. But it is much rarer, therefore, for something weak to become strong than for something strong to become weak. And this is how it all balances out, right? Because there's the same, with the Yarrow method and with the most, in my opinion, the most correct probabilities of the I Ching, there's an equal chance that you're going to get, it's 1 in 2, 50-50, that you're going to get either a yin line, that is a broken line, or a yang line, a solid line. However, the chances are different for whether or not that line is going to be stable or changing, that is, prepared to change into the opposite. So I hope with this you're now satisfied as to the presence of Yarrow in my teachings on the I Ching. If you can get yourself any 50 sticks, you can do the Yarrow method if you would like to try it. And now you can do it without having to worry about Sung-era mathematical formulas. Okay, so good luck and give it a try.